Now, get ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey everybody, it's Michael here with Oilers Live on Mega Thread Monday. And so I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Mike Dursa. I think whose video is frozen, by the way. So Mike, hopefully we get that fixed. At least you got a little bit of a smirk on your face. It's your show, though, so maybe we can fix the video while we're for your show.
Maybe. So I guess I'll start off with, if you were creating yourself as a guy on NHL 20, but you had to stick to who you actually were as a player, so if you were a forward, would you be a sniper, a playmaker, a power forward, grinder, enforcer? And I guess you're sort of like me, you played defense too. So were you a stay-at-home defenseman or a offensive defenseman? So you can create a forward and a defenseman of yourself. What's your attributes?
Oh, geez. You know what? I have to say that I haven't had the chance to play NHL 20 yet, and I haven't played the NHL games in a while. I have got every gaming machine imaginable except for something that can play NHL 20. So I've got the Oculus, I've got Xbox Game Pass on the PC, I've got it all, but no way to play NHL games. If I put myself in there as the ideal me, it would probably be more of a definitely not a stay-at-home defenseman. Except for something that probably closest would be like definitely a guy that rushes the puck, but I don't have the hands that these players have. So I a lot of times I'd be like the guy like Darnell Nurse flying down the left wing and then just shoot it up into the breadbasket of the goalie. But at least we got it into their zone. I'm gonna say I'm a little bit weirded out by your video not being frozen the way it is. Your eyes, like these steely eyes, staring back at me right now.
I see myself stuck there.
All right, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna try to. Why don't we give me half a second? Let me take you off of the thing, off of the broadcast, and then let's try to log you back in. How's that sound?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna call again?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're gonna have to end the call on here.
Okay.
All right. So Mega Thread Monday is off to a grand start, but we're gonna try it again here again, and hopefully we can get Mike on with a little bit of a talking head mentality, because unfortunately let me phrase this properly. We have got Brett Luchansky on later for Rip the Ref, and he's not going to have video tonight. So I can tell you that having to watch me speak for 2 hours, it's not going to be conducive to a lot of viewership. So hopefully we can. Do we got? You caught that part, eh? All right.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. What do we got? We got no video now. I could show a pulsating phone there. You got the video set up?
Yeah, no, I've got video on my end, but I just see myself, so.
Very weird. All right, Mike. We were better off with the frozen mic. Why don't you send me a picture of you or something that I can? What would you like me to put as your as your avatar for the Mega Thread Monday? It is, after all, Mega Thread Monday. So let's
All right.
let's see. I'm gonna do a Google search right now for Mega Thread Monday, and let's see if we can find an image. Oh man. Golf Monday. Nothing hockey related on here. A lot of old women. I heard the cat. some type of a
I just
cat.
sent you the picture of my kids as crying Jordans in the street with their Oiler jerseys on.
All right. Maybe we'll do that. All right. Okay. So you're on, and I think that it's your show tonight. It's Mega Thread Monday. So you kick it off. We've got an hour less than an hour now, before we've got Mr. Brett Luchansky on for a little Rip the Ref. If you are listening and you're on Twitter or you're on YouTube or Twitch or Facebook, wherever you watch, please go to the chat. And if you got some questions for Mike or for Brett Luchansky, please go ahead and throw them in the chat. All right, you are up. So I've talked too much.
The question that I know is burning through everybody's mind,
Yes.
since we've, Mega Thread Mondays, we've made it a little bit personal about you, because you always, do most of the question asking. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. How many career fights, Michael, for you?
Actually, quite a few. When I was
Awesome.
I don't. You know what? I don't even know. I don't even know what how many. But when I was playing midget, I got into quite a few tussles. Now, I'm not going to say that I was any good, but certainly, I never backed down, and then I kind of, I quit. And of course, playing men's league, you really don't get into much. But I have been kicked out of a number of games for, tossing a couple, in men's league, just because guys getting kind of out of control. But I'm not. To be fair, I'm not a rough player. Like people that have watched me say I have this like grin on my face when they're playing against me that can really piss people off. And so I think it's not me, it's them. So that's the answer.
With a grin.
That's right. It's the chirping with the grin. Yeah, it's not. It's definitely not me though.
I was totally expecting a similar answer to what I would have given you, but that was way more fun. Okay, let's go a little bit beyond the elementary you and me stories. Who's on your NHL forward Mount Rushmore? So 4 guys, past, present, future. I guess past and present players that make your Mount Rushmore for forwards.
Well, I would. You got to have Lemieux and Gretzky, 100%. And then my forwards, Lemieux, Gretzky. Yeah. Oh man, that's and can I take 4? How many? There's 4. Yeah.
You need 4. Yeah.
So Lemieux and Gretzky. I guess I'd probably put McDavid up there now. And then if I had to pick somebody else, it would. You know who I really liked, and just always thought he played in an era where he got a lot of credit, but he could have got a lot more if he hadn't played with Lemieux and Gretzky around, and that's Stevie Y. I definitely Stevie Y is definitely one of my favorite players. So I might have, and that tells you what era I started watching hockey in. But those two were definitely a lot of fun.
My 4 is a little bit different than yours. I haven't put McDavid there yet, just because I think to be on the Mount Rushmore of all-time greats, you've got to win some cups, and that just hasn't happened yet. But I think he'll get there. So my 4: Gretzky, Lemieux, Messier, and Crosby.
Yeah. Those are. Actually, I mean, you're right. You're right about McDavid. Bob the goalie says Gretzky, Lemieux, Howe, and Béliveau.
Yeah, it's you're going a little bit before my time.
You know who I forgot? You put me right on the spot. These are the kind of questions I should have beforehand. I was always a big Lafleur fan. I'd probably have Lafleur on there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and who wouldn't want to carve his hair into stone? Really, right? Like you gotta have. Could you imagine putting Ron Duguay up there? Do you remember watching Ron Duguay? He'd
A
flash a
little bit.
smile as he was skating through the corners. I bet you Bob the goalie remembers Mr. Duguay. He was quite the ladies'
And
man. Ron.
probably ally afraid of you if you're talking about the hair flashing.
Oh yeah,
Even I
I
think it was a skull at the end of his career, but
I'm not 100% sure though. Anybody had hair like Duguay. The thing with Duguay was he was actually pretty fast, and it was as if he would be skating down the sideboards and be smiling at the fans as he flew by, and he'd have his hair going in the wind and I don't, I don't remember much about the player, but I do remember that about him. He's quite the character. All right,
so
you're still your show.
Mount Rushmore of hair will come next week, I guess.
That's right. I'll be ready for that. I'm taking notes right now. Taking
Okay,
notes.
so we did the forwards. Now let's do Mount Rushmore of D-men.
So Paul Coffey and Bobby Orr, definitely. Lidstrom, and I got one more. Hey, one more. Oh man, Pronger. Even though he's like public enemy number one, is in my mind one of the biggest goalies. Hey, we've got a caller. Yeah, why don't we take a caller, Mike? You ready
Let's
for
take
this?
a call.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit the talk button, and you're gonna have to introduce. Okay, so on the count because this is the only way we can do it. So are you ready? It's Eric. Eric Friesen, and by the way,
All right.
the screener says Eric Freezing. Eric Freezing Boilers Live. That's scary. All right. So on 3, 2, 1, and go.
Hey, Eric, what's happening, man?
Mike, what's going on, buddy?
Not a lot, I think that's the same for everybody. But
I just caught the last little part of your conversation there. You guys were talking about Mount Rushmores, but I clicked off the phone before I heard your answers.
Oh, well, mine I've changed a couple times already in the moments that were here. Mine were Gretzky, Lemieux, and then I've changed it to Lafleur. And well, I really like Crosby. Crosby. That's my 4. Of course, Gordie Howe. I don't know how many. Like, could we do a number? Could we do a number of them? Like, could we change it up? Does it have to be 4?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have Gordie Howe on mine because I never really saw him play. I don't really count the tail end where he was in his 60s playing. I don't really count that. I never really saw him, so he's not on mine. Mine's kind of the same list as yours, Michael, but I had Messier as a part of that. 6 Stanley Cups. Hard to argue with that.
So it's just Mount Rushmore for forwards you're doing?
That's what we just did, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was moving on to defensemen.
Well, that's a tough one to pick just 4, isn't it? You'd have to think Crosby's pushing towards that territory, but I still think there's some guys who are ahead of him. I mean, Gretzky and Lemieux were automatic. I do have Gordie Howe in it, and not just because we're from the same hometown, but I mean, you look at the guy, played for 3 decades. I know you said that he played throughout his 40s and into his early 50s in the WHA, so those years don't get mentioned as much. But I think during his career he was top 10 in the league 16 times or something in points. I don't have the exact numbers, but 800 goals, 4th all time in points. Now it's pretty hard to ignore that, even if we didn't see it, because as time goes on, there will be a lot of people who never saw Wayne Gretzky, and I don't think that he can necessarily be ignored either, even though some people like to discredit 80s stats. So I'd have Gordy in there with them. And then the fourth spot, there's a lot. Like, did you guys give Yager any consideration?
Yeah, he was close for me.
Well, you know what? I just got asked a question, so I haven't really considered anybody.
It's tough. I would have Yager pushing there, or maybe even Maurice Richard. You know, one of the first great goal scorers in the history of the game. The goal scoring trophy is named after him. It's probably one of those guys there filling out the last spot at this point in my books.
All right, since we have you here, Eric, then I'm gonna stump you or put you on the spot like I did Michael, and then he can answer after this. Let's go with your top 4 captains all time. So your Mount Rushmore of captains from any team.
Okay. Mark Messier with a bullet top. Probably Steve Yzerman.
Are you reading my list, Eric?
No, is that what you said?
No, I haven't said anything. But
Okay. Because see, captain leadership is a harder one to do, right? And that is where I'll favor more towards your theory of guys that you saw play, because it's really hard for us to know what kind of leadership a guy was giving back in the 60s or 50s, right? So, I mean, when I was a kid, the guys who were considered the good leaders were like Joe Sakic, Yzerman. So those guys come to mind. Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the two that I'll say for sure, Yzerman and Messier. I got to think on the other two for a second here.
What do you got, Michael?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, Mark Messier and Yzerman, for sure. We're talking captains, right? Roberto Luongo.
Yeah.
You dug deep for that joke.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Hey. All right. And guys that we've seen play. Oh man. What? Yeah. That is. I mean, that is a tough one. There've been a lot of great captains. You know what? I need some time to think about it. Every captain that I think I keep thinking of, oh yeah, there's one better. The only one that keeps coming to mind is Luongo. What about you?
Yeah, no, it has to be Messier, Yzerman. I think you'd probably put Gretzky in that conversation as well.
I thought about that when you were saying it, but when it comes to it's hard to take anything away from Gretzky, but when it comes down to it, right, like he's not the first person that comes to mind when you're thinking about great captains, right? Like he's great players, greatest player.
Yeah.
But like as like a true leader, a guy like Mark Messier is far and away number one. But like guys that I think about in today's game, like Taze has always been a great leader, right? And
this generation for sure.
Yeah. That's a great player and a great leader is a guy like Crosby, right? Like he's both, right? Like and it's hard to take anything away from Gretzky. That's a hard argument to make, right? Because Gretzky he led, obviously.
He supposedly wasn't the most vocal guy in the room, though. He was more of a leadership on the ice, and maybe that's kind of what McDavid is a little bit too. They're not the big raw guys, but maybe speak up when they have to.
So Glenn Moss says Sakic or Denis Potvin. Bob says Yzerman was the longest serving captain at 20 years.
Ray Bourque would have been pretty close to that.
Yeah. Quote by Window Liquor. Gretzky's getting shade because he wasn't a shit player. well, I wouldn't consider Messier a shit player though either, right? Like, but I'm not trying to say Messier doesn't Messier or Gretzky doesn't deserve to be up there for great captains. He certainly does. He doesn't come to mind when I think of like, the ultimate great captains, right? He's not the first person.
So we're
However,
also going to
captain 4 teams to Stanley Cups, and I don't know how many other captains in NHL history can say that. So he does have that on his resume.
Yeah, no, and then some bullshit. Gretzky ran that team. I can't argue with Gretzky on there. I mean, it's an argument I would lose every time. You can't argue Gretzky was a great leader. He's just not the guy that comes to mind for me. Messier 100%, Stevie Y 100%. There's been some good captains. It's not, but you can't win an argument against Gretzky. He's the best player to ever play the game, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And just watching some of these classic games now just sort of solidifies it for me even more.
Here's another curveball I'll throw at both of you. Who was a really strong leader that never really served at all as a captain in your minds? I got one.
Oh, jeez.
Ryan Smith.
Yeah, that's the first one.
You're reading my notes again, Eric.
Yeah.
I don't count the one game token captaincy as
one game token captaincy.
as anything really.
I couldn't believe that he didn't get to see at some point in his career. Like, you would have. I mean, I understand that Jason Smith might have been the leader in that dressing room. We weren't in there, so we don't know. But a guy like that, you just figure he would have had to see for at least a few years. I would have given it to him in 2011 as soon as he came back to the Oilers.
Think of the guys that went ahead of him, for the captaincy. Jason Smith's one, Sean Horkoff's another one, Ethan Morrow's another one. Like, at some point, it was his time, and he never got it.
And when he came back, when Smith came back, Horkoff had only had the C for one season by then, I think. So it might have been tough to pull it off him after just 1 year with it, but I still would have strongly considered it. Not that it mattered that much to that era of Oilers hockey, because they weren't a very good club, but I just think it would have been nice for his legacy to have had it the last few years of his career.
What more did you expect from the guy to do as an Edmonton Oiler, really? I mean, he gave you everything he had, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's up there in the all-time lists with the legend players from the 80s. For a guy, who didn't have that type of skill set that willed his way to success, you can't ask for much more.
So, and Window Lickers are got the best comments today. He's Lucic, he says, number one. But also, and this is a good question, how was Horkoff ahead of Smith? Mike Bossy was never a captain. My favorite, of course, Guy Lafleur. Bobby Orr was never up there. Paul Coffey. Pavel Datsyuk, Larry Robinson, right? Mark Recchi. These are all big names, right? I've got some background noise going on here.
I got one more on the Mount Rushmore for both of you while you're here. Mount Rushmore. I can't even talk. Mount Rushmore goalies. My 4 goalies are going to be Fuhr, Hasek, Waugh, and Brodeur.
Fuhr, Hasek, Waugh, and Brodeur. What? So the last one out of those, I'd say that the one that's sort of fourth on that list to me is Fuhr, and he's the one that's maybe interchangeable with other people, right? But to me that's a great list, right? And but I guess, again, I hate games like this because
I love these lists because it really puts you on the spot, especially if you haven't thought about it beforehand.
yeah. So Bob's got Bob's got the old list coming out. Sawchuk, Bauer, Plant, and Hall. So he's at least got one Oilers goalie on there.
But
You got. I was going to ask Bob if he could pick out which goalie was Oilers goalie on there, but you ruined it.
I spoiled it. My bad.
Yeah. Kevrock says, "What the hell, are the barbers all closed or something?" Yes, they are. In fact, Kevrock, I have committed to not shaving and to not cutting my hair the whole time we're in isolation. So by the time in isolation, now the one thing I will do though is I will trim the nose hairs. I was on a call on a sorry, going off track here, but I was on a call for work the other day. That there was a guy on there whose nose hairs honestly looked like you could take a lawnmower to. It was awful. It was awful. So guys, trim your nose hairs. Trim your nose hairs. It's very important. That's my PSA for today. So Window Liquor says, Mike, tell him your list again.
My list was Fuhr, Hasek, Waugh, and Martin Brodeur.
Now, I mean, it's the thing that's interesting about that, right? Is Bob comes up with Sawchuk, Bauer, Plant, and Hall, all from what we know, amazing goaltenders, but we never watched any of them play, right? And so I mean, it becomes a an era and a thing about who you were able to watch play, and then if you were to pick any of those four, you're only going off of what somebody else said. Window Liquor tends to agree with your four on Mount Rushmore for goalie. Did you have a different four, Eric?
Oh, well, I think you got to go Brodeur, Waugh, Hasek, and then maybe even a guy like Ken Dryden in there. He had a short career, but very successful. And, there's so many guys you're going to leave off because there will be old-timers who will say that Sawchuk was the best ever, or Hall. There's just so many guys. But if you have to narrow it down, I tend to give it to those three guys. And maybe it was because of the era they played in a little bit too. It was the dead puck era when a lot of them were having their best success. But I'd probably have at the top of my list Brodeur, Waugh, and Hasek.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to. What do you think about a guy like Kiprasov? Even I know he's a ex-Flames player, but he was outstanding, right?
He was outstanding, but not to be considered one of the four greatest goalies in NHL history. I think that's a huge stretch, even for a player who I wasn't a fan of.
No, I wasn't a fan, but I mean, how many games did the Flames win 1-0 during that era? Right? Yeah. He's definitely up there for me as one of the best goalies. He's definitely not one of the top four, but when he was on, he was outstanding, right? He was unbelievable, and I think that was probably among the most boring hockey I've ever watched in my life outside of the New Jersey Devils when they invented the trap, watching the Flames play back then, because they would literally win.
Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, or Minnesota Wild too. But the Flames would win 1-0 or 2-1 games, right? That was it. I'd love to actually go back and see how many of those goals were Ginla. I remember going to the Odd Flames game, and every time he shot the puck, he could shoot it from their goal line, and all the Flames fans would go, "Whoa!" like they'd never seen somebody shoot the puck before. Anyway, sorry, I gotta put a little bit of Flames love into the podcast, otherwise it's just not there. It's just not an Oilers podcast with a little Flames love, right?
Yeah.
All right. So what do you got there, Mike?
Yeah,
What else is left?
All right. Wasn't expecting Eric, but he can probably field this too because he does his own thing. For both of you, who's been your favorite interview that you've done?
Oh man, it's a good thing they don't listen. I've had a number of really cool ones. Jack Michaels I've had on twice, as you know. That was really cool. So he's definitely up there because he's just a really good guy, and love his story. Amy Jones was really neat, just from her perspective. The the mother of NHL players, plural. Strudwick was cool. Yeah, and I had Low Tide on. That was neat. It was at the time I had Low Tide on when we were waiting to hear who was going to be general manager of the Oilers. But I'd have to go with if I had to go with anybody, I have to go with Jack Michaels, just because listening to him talk and everything, and but it's a toss up. In my mind, between him, Rob Clark, and Amy Jones. Rob Clark was pretty special because he sang the anthem, which and it was neat to have him to listen to that while we're all missing hockey. Kev Rock says Amy was his favorite, and Amy Jones was amazing. She's such a character, and she's such a good hockey mom, right? Like. She's definitely. You're a jerk for asking those type of questions, Mike. Go ahead.
You said, they're not listening, so they won't feel bad.
That's right. Eric, you go ahead.
Well, first, I just want to say I think I've listened to every single episode of, whether it be the Heavy Hockey podcast or the Oilers Live podcast over the last 2 years, and I really like the Jack Michaels ones you did, as well as Amy Jones, but I think my favorite one was the one with Low Tide, and I'd love to hear a follow-up with you and him someday, or even if I could get him on my podcast too. So that would be my pick of the favorite interview I've heard from you. And I mean, of course, the guy running the interview tonight, Mr. Mike Durst, has been a pretty good guest many times as well too, including a guest on my podcast. So he's up there as well. I think the favorite one I've done so far since I've been working with you was still the first one I did with Brian, just because, I don't know, sometimes the first article I've written for a place or the first podcast I've done for a place always kind of stands out because it's the one you remember the most vividly. But, there's been a lot. And I guess from an interview in general, from a broadcast standpoint, it would have to be Ryan Smith. When I was working at Global Saskatoon, I had
Oh,
I think we lost Eric.
it's a conspiracy. Nobody wants us to know.
Eric left.
He was about to say something super top secret.
Profound. Yeah.
All right. Well, Eric, if you want to call back in, you're more than welcome to.
I think he's tried again. Maybe here.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not.
Yeah. Well, I'll watch for him. He'll dial back in.
Okay. So this is related to that other one. For you, Mike. If you could have anybody on the podcast that you've never had, who would it be?
Oh, jeez. If I had one person. Now there's probably people that selfishly I would want on to drive listenership. like I think relevant today would be Connor McDavid, obviously.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean that would be pretty cool. Um, oh, what's happened is I think I lost. Well, Eric, sorry, I think I lost connection to our call-in server, so we might be out of luck having Eric back tonight. Maybe when we take a break, I'll log back in. So at about 9:30, Eric, if you're listening, we'll get you back on. Selfishly, Connor McDavid, but he probably wouldn't be. And sorry, Connor, I know you're listening, but he wouldn't be.
Cheers, Connor.
He wouldn't be my first choice. I might go with like I'd probably love to have another conversation with Guy Lafleur, or even for that matter, like Mario Lemieux or Wayne Gretzky or somebody like that. I really like to go back and hear some of the stories that some of these guys have. Paul Coffey. I've been listening to him lately. He's been and he's a hell of a good guest on some of these shows. So he would be really good. The other thing that I've been trying to get to is also getting like somebody like an Elliot Friedman and find out the behind the scenes on the media side, right? Like somebody like that would be cool. Rod Phillips.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of that's a tough question because there's a long list. Kev Rock says Smead. I don't know if that's in response to this, but
Probably Laddie Schmid is pretty funny. It's
yeah,
some of
funny.
the interviews he does, he's kind of a character. So
Yeah, there'd be. I mean, there's definitely a long list. There's a whole bunch of people I've reached out to over time. In order to come on the show. I typically if I think that for sure they're not going to respond to me like some of the players, then I don't reach out to them. I've had some people lined up that have been pretty cool, and it just didn't work out, and then I let it go. And then at the same time, there's a whole bunch of fans out there that when I started this podcast, I really wanted it to be more about the fans than about the Jack Michaels and those kind of folks, right? That everybody listens to already. Like we get a chance to listen to those people, but I wanted to hear from guys like you, like me for that matter. That was why I started it, right? And in fact, in my logo, the Oilerslive logo, it says "podcast with fans," and that's not to imply. I always laughed at that because it's not to imply that I have fans of the podcast, but it's a podcast with fans, right? And so having getting Sam on from Sheffield, that was pretty exciting, right? Meeting you. Meeting all of these people. We've got Marcus Boudelier coming on Thursday, and Bob as well, who's Bob, our stats guy, is going to join us on Thursday as well.
Our statistician, yes.
Our statistician. So we've got those two joining us, and those guys are fans, right? And to me, that's pretty cool. The one thing that I've found that is quite remarkable in doing this is just how knowledgeable everybody is, right? Like, I've been trying to figure out because I only see on my chat bar, I only get to see the name of Window Liquor, but I'm trying to see who it is on Twitter, and I can't figure it out. But when people comment and they talk about certain players, right? And like I know that they know these players, right? Kev Rock says the guys, out in Buffalo, right? Like, I'm fascinated by fans, right, and just how knowledgeable they are. I find myself actually, I find that quite often the people that I have on guests and as guests, and the reason that I ask the questions is I'm typically learning from them, right? Like a lot that I take out from the game is stuff that I've taken from like Sean Patrick Ryan or Eric. Eric's got a lot of knowledge and recall on the game, right? So yeah, all those people.
All right. Sorry for making you appear to be a bit of a jerk, but that's on me. 2 days ago, you brought up on your own Twitter feed that you were celebrating your kind of 14th anniversary of being clean and sober. What's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself through those 14 years of being clean?
Oh, geez. That's a really good question because I've learned a lot, and I will tell you this: the one thing that I have learned is, as people get to know me, they'll realize this. That, I really want to help others, right? And so, by helping others, I've been able to. It's helped me, right? Like let's be clear. Like, people that help others get benefit out of it. And I certainly get, a personal benefit out of it. And, it helps me both stay clean and sober and, gives me the joy of seeing others, either lift up or rise up from whatever situation they're in. So that's definitely a big thing that I've learned about myself, and something that I take away from that. But then the other big thing is that I still have a long ways to go. Right? I mean, I make a lot of mistakes, right? And I think we all do. But the important part is that when you have something to go back on, and you can realize that you can learn from those mistakes and take the next step forward. To me, that's something that I've learned about myself and about other people. That they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I don't believe that at all. And in fact, I've learned a lot and continue to learn, and have the scars and the sobriety chips and all of that to take from it. But that's one thing that I've learned, just as the inner ability of who we are to change.
Proud of you.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just while you were going there, I started thinking like maybe what we should think about is when this is all said and done, doing another one of our games, just kind of really just to play hockey again and make people smile and have some fun again.
Oh, 100%. I mean, as every day goes by, I miss hockey more and more, and I miss watching it 100%, but I miss playing it even more. Getting out there, that it is fun. It's fun being with Oilers fans watching a game, but there's nothing better than skating on the ice and just having some fun and playing some hockey. Right? It's as Canadian for us as ever, and it's a really good pastime. I love it.
I guess though, like if there's clearance by July, that would be sort of the second game for Adam, right, for his birthday.
Yeah, there are a couple things. That's yeah. I mean, in the risk of getting too serious on the podcast today, that's definitely something.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. And we and the other thing that we haven't brought up today is just the anniversary of the Humboldt Broncos tragedy, which is also a big deal. It's in that vein, right? Like this is. And it's not just hockey. I mean, it's sport in general, but hockey binds Canadians and brings us together. We all know where we were for special goals. We all know, we all remember our own hockey. Whether it was playing as kids or playing competitively or whatever. But for us, for you and I, and for a lot of people that listen to the podcast, hockey also means we met Adam Zakuski, and so that's pretty special. It also means that we felt for a busload of players that none of us knew personally, but those of us that have followed hockey for a long time or played hockey and have ever been on a bus, we can relate to, and so all very important moments, and yeah, I mean, if we can get out back on the ice, we'll do it. In James S on YouTube says my stick is still at the door, and I think that's like, to me, that's awesome, right? 2 years later, it's just about something bigger than a lot of times we say it's just a game. I mean, is it? It's brought us all together. It's the start of why you and I are friends. It's a lot of different things, right?
Sort of becomes a fabric of who we are, right? And I've always felt like the game of hockey is a lot like being a Canadian. You're playing on frozen water, which kind of is symbolic of a Canadian winter, and it's a game about perseverance, and that's really what surviving the winter in Canada is all about. So I see a lot of similarities, and yeah, I mean, if the Oilers lose a hockey game, I'm upset for about 15 minutes, and then I'm back to being myself. It doesn't really, control my way of life or my being. I don't get mad online really that frequently.
Yeah,
there is occasions, but yeah, no, I mean, we if you count the man hours that we've put into the sport, it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you joining me to do these live streams has been amazing, and part of the reason we do it is hockey, and so when you think about that, and you think about the time that we've done, I think that we've done now, we've done a couple times a week. We've probably done close to 20 hours worth of live streaming since we've been all stuck at home. And that's hockey related in some regard. So it is such a big deal, right? And I think it's just the fact that it brings us all together. That's amazing, right? Hey, where were you when the accident, the Humboldt? What's interesting is as I play in a lot of alumni games. I was actually at the Hockey Hall of Fame when the news of the Humboldt. I was at a draft night for an alumni tournament, and it was in Toronto at the Hall of Fame, and guys like Gary Lehman were there, and a whole bunch of ex-Maple Leafs players. I can't think of who they are all are now, but what's his name that played in Kamloops and had all the points. Darcy Tucker was there. Anyway, that's I remember seeing and hearing about it there, and it certainly put a damper on the evening festivities when we joined.
It was like getting sucker punched. I was I was in Edmonton. I think I was working at End of the Roll at the time, and I think I think it happened on a Saturday, but we didn't get the news until the Sunday because, I'm pretty sure that's sort of how it went down. I think. Anyway, we didn't hear about it till the day after, and it just, it's hard. It was really like getting the wind knocked out of you. It's tough. I mean, even if you didn't ride the bus at playing hockey or whatever, you probably were on a bus with other kids to field trips. So you really, so many people could sort of empathize with it. And, if you lose, you know, that many people all at once, I mean, when you're riding a bus and you look around and think, okay, well, most of these people would be gone if it was the same situation. That's hard on anybody. I mean, and yeah, you empathize with the hockey aspect of it, and just so many young lives gone, and how many families are in turmoil. Watching Chris Joseph, former Oiler, talk about losing, his son, and yeah, and then it went beyond just players. The trainer, the coaches, and just it's really really hard.
Yeah, you talk about that. I think the other thing that has to be mentioned is we all know it's the anniversary. We're reminded every 2 years, and we go through it. It becomes a moment in time and something that we all rallied behind. But these families on the anniversary, like I know how hard it is, on the anniversary of my whether it's my mother or my father's passing.
Right.
And I know those dates, like is when they come up, but they're not like nobody writes about it. I write about it, and I like to write about it as a matter of tribute, but it doesn't go any further than my Twitter account, right?
Yeah.
These folks, whether they want to or not, when that day comes, they're not just going to be. They don't just relive that moment from I lost my son or my daughter, for that matter, in that accident. But they have to relive the images again quite often because it's all on the media. Um, it's just such a tragedy from so many angles. But yeah, I couldn't fathom it. And to lose your child in that way and in such a public way and yeah, it would be unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's something like that could have derailed that whole team, but I think it took courage and amazing perseverance to sort of keep going. Uh, I mean, yeah, that very easily could have put an end to the Humboldt Broncos as an organization. Um, yeah. Uh, now I'm tongue tied, but the
Yeah.
the whole thing is difficult. But if you look at some of the people, like she goes by just Deb Darling on Twitter. I think that's Darcy's sister, Darcy Hogan, the coach.
Okay.
Um, Man, is that woman inspirational? Like she is one tough cookie and keeps going and going. And yeah, I watch her sort of from a quiet distance, but pretty amazing, the strength of the human spirit in that lady.
Yeah, you'll have to pass me that handle when you can, and I'll definitely have a look. Yeah, I mean, it is unbelievable, right? And for as much tragedy, right? It brought together a nation to come together and look after these families. Just that GoFundMe, the fact that it got so much funding is unbelievable, right? It was it in a lot of ways impacted Canada more than isolation did, right? Well, it was unbelievable. I think that I just for a lot of people they knew what knew what it was like to be on a bus and go
Yeah.
around and play
the
hockey like
the
that.
difference between this and that kind of is you know,
I just
with that there
for
was
a
such a
lot of it,
finality to it,
way
right?
to
That's the hardest part is, you know, for a lot of those young men, and you know, Dana the trainer and the coaches, that was finality for them. This we know is kind of a temporary thing. We don't know how long, but we know we're going to get through it and kind of back to business as usual. But you know, for those families, their lives courses were altered forever on that fateful day, and that's the hard part about that.
yeah,
Um,
100%. Yeah.
I want to go back to something a little bit lighter
Yeah, yeah.
before we catch Brett. Um, so, you know, the first question I asked you was if you were creating yourself as a player on EA, and your attributes, you know, what they would be, and you kind of hinted at sort of an offensive defenseman who doesn't score.
yeah,
um,
yeah. That's me being
you know,
honest.
yeah, yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know, I played mostly forward growing up, but could play every position. Would play goal at times if I had to, and play defense. Were you kind of a 50-50 forward defenseman, or were you mostly a defenseman and just kind of forward if needed then?
Yeah, you know, uh, I definitely 50-50. You know, I
Oh,
actually I think that like even now and I play on a few different teams. One of them I play defense. A couple of them I play forward. It I actually really, you know what I love about playing defense, because and here's why is defensively I can shut down or potentially shut down a really good player, right? And I've played some good players, and I've got that chance, and that's, you know, to me that's that's fun. Like that's where I can excel. But forward, I mean, if I'm playing against a really good defenseman, I've got zero chance getting by them, right? so, so my odds of actually making a good play going the other way against somebody that's a quality player are a lot slimmer than the than making a good play against a quality player who's coming down the ice, right? I think that's probably why, and I enjoy that. I enjoy being competitive. I love being competitive in just about everything I do, and so that to me is a big deal. Yeah.
um, I guess like if I was making myself, I would have been more of a playmaker slash Ryan Smith guy. I, I, you know, because I was a point guard playing basketball, I always had good vision on the ice, and we're looking for people cutting to the net and that kind of thing. And you know, if the hands cut up to the to the head, chances are I can make some plays happen. But if I'm being honest, most of my goals came from right inside the crease or pretty close to it.
Hey, you know, you bring up
And
something, and if people are going to be listening on Thursday, and I hope you tune in, we're going to have Marcus Boudelier on, and he's writing now for the OHL network, and he's writing about the Kingston Frontenacs. Specifically, anytime he messages me, it's about Shane Wright, and and so if you don't know who Shane Wright is, I suggest you go and Google him or on YouTube or wherever. But you're going to want to know this kid. He's gonna beat Connor McDavid's numbers in junior. So the question becomes: is he better than McDavid? And still, what people say is he doesn't. He's not as fast as McDavid, right? And the first thing that always came to mind was just how fast McDavid was with the like he just has hockey sense and how good he is on the ice with the puck and speed. But they're saying Shane Wright from an all around perspective could, and lots is yet to come, but could be as as good as those guys. His numbers are better than Tavares and McDavid so far. The other guy, did you hear about this Connor Bedard? Has exceptional player status in the dub.
Yeah, yeah. That when is that draft for WHL?
Yeah, I don't. That part I don't know,
Not sure. Yeah.
but again, another guy who you guys should, anybody who's listening should check out the YouTubes and the and that about this guy. Okay, so we're at 9:30. One of my favorite segments coming up. We're going to take a short break, and I'm going to reload the call in. So if anybody wants to call in, they can at 587-907-5483. Bob, you got a little story that a Humboldt story that you might want to share. You're welcome to call in, or we just talk to Brett when we get him online. So maybe what I'll do right now is I'm going to actually stop the stream, Mike, and then we will restart it, and hopefully we can get your video working and Brett back online. Sound good?
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll see you guys shortly.